A lot of students potentially could see some or all of their student loans forgiven if a program by the Biden administration is allowed to stand. The loan forgiveness program is being challenged in court, and in less than 2 weeks, the Supreme Court will be hearing oral arguments. So who better to help us break down the case and the potential outcomes than attorney Alexis Gardner. Alexis, welcome back.
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. There are two cases here at issue, right? And they're both being heard. Kind of tell us the different cases.
Well, so there are basically two challenges. It could be broken down into more, but there are 6 states, which is Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina, that are saying they're going to be harmed by this debt relief. And then there's 2 individuals from Texas who are essentially saying they're not going to benefit from this relief, and so nobody should benefit from it at all. So those are kind of the two parties to the case, and obviously with the Biden administration on the other side. But the main challenges that are being taken up are those of the states. And does the state have standing to even sue in this regard? That
is what I wanted to focus on today, the state's case. Several states are suing. You just listed them all off. How can the states sue the Biden administration or an executive branch? How can the states do that over a policy or program? Kind of explain that.
Well, generally, individuals who are harmed can bring claims against the government. However, states can also bring claims, not on behalf of their people, but only if the state as an entity is harmed. If they have some type of physical or economic interest, then they can sue to stop a policy that they think would harm them. But they have to have what's known as standing. And standing means you have a particularized, concrete injury. It can't just be hypothetical or conjecture, like, well, if this passes, we could suffer in this way. It has to be concrete and particularized. And so the Biden administration is saying they aren't going to be harmed. How are they going to be harmed by their citizens getting debt relief?
Interesting. So could this affect, do you think, depending on the decision, could this potentially affect the executive branch's power to implement programs unilaterally?
Absolutely. If the Supreme Court decides that the states do have standing here, then it could open the floodgates, and essentially the states can stop any program that's implemented by an administration or a president that they don't like, whether they're actually going to experience harm or not. So this is a huge deal. Is the federal government going to now be more limited in their power? Are they not going to be able to wipe out our student debt? Or is it going to be left up to the states to decide what their individual populace is going to get?
And I wanted to get specific because in our emails back and forth, we had discussed the HEROES Act, which is a 9/11 era law that says the Department of Education, right, can implement certain measures during a national emergency. Now, this was passed during 9/11, COVID being a national emergency. So could it eventually impact the HEROES Act? And okay, so what's an emergency and what can we implement during this declared emergency?
Yeah, exactly. So another issue that's being taken up, aside from the states having standing, is the Department of Education exceeding its authority. Like you said, the HEROES Act, 9/11, the states are saying, well, this debt relief isn't targeted just to people who've suffered from COVID. We're opening it up to everyone. And the Biden administration is saying, just like the HEROES Act, we didn't only give relief to people who were actually victims of 9/11. It was open to everybody. So this is no different than that. The Department of Education has wide latitude to waive any debt or to modify it in what way it sees fit. So now the Department of Education obviously is a federal entity that can be regulated and stopped from bringing relief.
Okay, so I do want to ask, and I try to ask this every time we talk about Supreme Court cases, but just asking you, what are some of the possibilities that this Supreme Court could decide, and which way could this go? Which ways could this go?
Well, so they could decide that the states have standing, and if they do decide the states have standing, they could still decide to end up passing the debt relief plan. They could modify it or have some amendments to cure the state from being harmed in whatever way they think they're going to be harmed. However, it seems unlikely given the current makeup of our Supreme Court. It is very much stacked. It hasn't been this stacked since the 1930s. And so we're seeing them enthusiastically inviting cases that it traditionally wouldn't hear. And it seems that, it's a way to dismantle some of the programs that have been implemented in the last decades.
So that oral arguments, I should say, coming up in less than 2 weeks. And of course, the decisions usually come down in June for the Supreme Court.
Sometimes
so
July. Yes, it could be July. We'll see, but we'll hear in February.
A lot could come from then. Thank you very much, Alexis, for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
The search is on for some new talent to take up an important mantle in Broken Arrow. After the break, how you can try out to be the new Rooster Days mascot and what all the job entails.